gonna talk like grown-ups? Is that what we are?
What's going on, everyone? It's Sam. Welcome back to the channel. Marvel's finally back in theaters with Black Widow, so let's break down one of the most mysterious stories of the MCU, and that is what happened in Budapest with her and Hawkeye. This is something fans have been dying to know for years now, so spoiler warning if you haven't seen the movie yet. There's actually two separate events that they depict with both flashbacks and present clues and explanations. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel if you like Marvel, the MCU comics, and everything in between. Other than that, let's get into the video. Let's go. The Budapest story is something that everyone has been wanting to know, and why Nat has a lot of red in her ledger, or at least part of it, and Black Widow was sure enough to dive into the aspect of both Natasha and Clint's backstory through this Budapest scene. Now in this movie, I think a lot of us thought that we actually would see a Hawkeye flashback in some sort of scene, but spoilers, that didn't happen. And although I was a little bit disappointed at first, Marvel has given us a ton of clues as to what happened, which was actually better than seeing a full flashback or cameo. As the co-host of my podcast stated, in recent years Marvel has had bad experiences trying to explain previous stories that were untouched. The biggest example of this was Nick Fury's scratched eye that was set up so perfectly throughout the MCU, especially in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It was reduced to only being a cat scratch, or if it makes it any cooler, a Flarkin scratch. This left a lot of fans displeased, and I think that's why I really enjoyed how they explained what happened in Budapest without actually showing what happened. So what did actually happen? When Nat and Yelena finally meet in the movie, they have an intense fight, and as they stop, Yelena said along the likes of, "Can you please explain what happened here? What kind of bullets do that to walls?" And Nat responds with, "Not bullets, arrows." This is of course our first hint as to what happened with Clint, and as we know, Clint originally was supposed to find and kill Natasha, and in this safe house it looks like there was a prior fight that did happen between the two. This is a perfect example of showing us what happened without actually showing us what happened. In the end, Clint ends up nearly saving Natasha's life, and in order to bring her into S.H.I.E.L.D., she was forced to wipe out Dreykov's daughter. This was the collateral damage that Nat was willing to put on her ledger, or the so-called red that she describes that's in her ledger. In the flashback that they do show of Nat in the car scoping out Dreykov's daughter, the person that Nat is talking to on the comms ready to engage appears to be Hawkeye, or an intended way of saying that it was him, helping her complete the mission so that she could be initiated into S.H.I.E.L.D., and as we know, her and Hawkeye were together in S.H.I.E.L.D. from the beginning, because Hawkeye, instead of killing Natasha, brought her under his wing and tried turning her life around. This predates anything that we've seen in the Infinity Saga, and of course takes place before her appearance as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Iron Man 2. The "You and I Remember Budapest Very Differently" line is more of a comedic take on what happened after the brutal bombing. When Nat and Yelena escape from Taskmaster in the present day, they end up in a small hideout in a vent that Nat and Clint originally designed and stayed in after the assassination attempt. She tells Yelena that it was 10 days of hiding, and specifically a few within this small vented hideout. Inside this hideout there were marked up walls of tic-tac-toe and other things that they did to pass the time. So when Nat says this reminds me of Budapest all over again, and Clint says "You and I remember Budapest very differently," it was because Hawkeye first lets Nat live, Nat is then recruited, she scopes out the scene, Hawkeye or some agent detonates the charge, and then they go hiding out playing tic-tac-toe instead of actually fighting through the streets of Budapest, which is very different from fighting aliens in Avengers 1. So at two separate parts of the movie, all while in Budapest, they're able to explain what's happening in the present with Taskmaster through the fighting sequences, but also explaining what happened with her and Clint back in the day. The post-credit also hints that we may see more of this flashback or lines directed to it, since we know that Yelena is going after Clint in the Hawkeye show. It's possible they refer to it again from his point of view. I thought this backstory was done really well and just gave us enough of an explanation, but also keeps us theorizing just how Loki recently confirmed in an alternate timeline he casted an illusion and escaped from Thanos, which was a long time theory that people had after Infinity War came out. So it's cool to see things explained in this way. Let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments below, and if you liked how they explained the part of the red that's in her ledger. Other than that though, I just want to say thank you. I'm another Marvel guy, and I'll catch you on the blip.